Victor, thanks for joining us on the security equation. Let's start by talking about how you got into, when you were a young kid. What did you want to be as a young kid?
I wanted to be a football player, like every other young kid. But life just had a different route for me that I'm 100% comfortable knowing that I'm living in my purpose and passion right now.
That's awesome. But then we all gave up our football careers at a certain point. You got into law enforcement. Talk about why and then how did that happen?
Well, it initially started with the military. I had graduated high school and wasn't feeling that I was college material. So I was my uncle, who I was named after, who had done 40 years in the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia. That's where I'm from. I finished high school in Northern Virginia in Falls Church, Alexandria area. So when I graduated high school, I went back to Norfolk. And I was kind of like caretaking with my uncle as we were shopping around which military I was going to go into. We had gone through the Navy and Marines, but I saw my neighbor's boyfriend in a uniform that I didn't really understand, and it was the U.S. Coast Guard. And I looked him up, so I ended up joining the Coast Guard, which a petty officer in the Coast Guard is a federal law enforcement,
right? Using
the customs rules. And so my last station in the Coast Guard was here in Miami. I live in Miami because I was seeking a job to drive go-fast boats chasing drug smugglers for U.S. Customs. That came true, and that's how I really got started in federal law enforcement on the outside the military.
Well, and today we see that in the news. Is that something you were involved in back in the day of chasing down these boats I think it's a different story today, what we see in the news, what the government's doing, but is that relevant?
Oh, yeah. Border security is border security. And so I'm living in Miami and our border is the waterways, right?
Right.
So, a lot of people coming from the Bahamas, anywhere in the Caribbean, Miami kind of caters to that Caribbean world. So we did a lot of boat stuff on the water, whether in my case, we were doing a lot of drug trafficking, and it was only when we became Homeland Security that it turned into a deeper mission of not just addressing goods coming and going out of the country. We are addressing people going and coming out of the country.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to the people part. It's I think it's a very not well understood. People hear about it, they don't know it. Topic, but you spent quite a while with then DHS in this role. What were some of the things that lessons you learned and from that engagement and that experience in your life that you would share with younger people that want to get into the industry or even today's security leaders? You had to have learned a lot while you were doing that.
Oh yeah, well, outside of learning how to drive a boat in high stress situations, outside of dealing with people in high stress situations. Honestly, what I know now, I wish I knew back then, because where I am now with law enforcement and where law enforcement is really missing a huge part of their career is emotional intelligence training. That is so much missing in that world. And it's displayed every time you see something on TV dealing with law enforcement to a certain degree,
Elaborate on that. I've heard of behavioral. And look, in our business, we're always looking at, some sort of counter surveillance just around events. Do we have protesters? Does this person look different? But what do you mean by emotional intelligence?
Well, if you look at a lot of the law enforcement mishaps that appear to be mishaps, to some it is, to some it's not, is how we manage our emotions. Right. A lot of law enforcement people get in trouble because they're not managing the emotions. This guy ran from me. This guy said something negative to me. We in law enforcement should be like the masters at managing our emotions, just for the power that we have, carrying a gun, carrying a badge, and managing people in different situations. But when we allow our emotions take over our actions, no matter what people say, that's when you see law enforcement really get in trouble.
And is your most recent example what we've seen in Minneapolis recently?
Definitely. If we want to take that last shooting of Mr. Pettit, right? Prior to him getting shot, you saw an officer with a gas can while he was on the ground by other officers hitting this guy in the face. And I could tell you, we've never had any training to use gas cans in that matter.
Right.
So it's how we speak to people, it's how we supposed to be at a level to de-escalate. But if you look at a lot of law enforcement situations, we're escalating them because we're not managing our emotions.
I get what you're saying completely. And listen, I'm a big supporter of our law enforcement.
Me too.
When they're doing the job that they've been trained to do.
Right.
A lot of people will say to you, but Victor, this was an antagonizer that created that emotional imbalance between himself and that officer. What's your response?
What's the threat to my life? People can be what they, we have a country, we got freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want to say.
Right.
But then we take it personal. Right. And then we're like, oh, you can't say that to me. I've done training to law enforcement because my specialty is human trafficking.
Right.
And that really started my evolution on understanding a lot that's going on with me personally and how I see the world today.
So our constitutional right to protest, which includes maybe saying something that's derogatory, inappropriate to any law enforcement person, by the way, could be to the subject of your protest, which would have nothing to do with law enforcement. Law enforcement is there just to keep the protest within the First Amendment rights.
Right.
It's not until the protester then does something outside the law. And name calling isn't one of those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so,
I think that's where, we're missing the point in this country where, yes, protest your cause, whatever it is, do it peacefully. Right. And in our business, we have to support that protest. We want to make sure that they have that opportunity.
Right.
Away from the entry of our privatized space, right? There's some guidelines for that protest.
Exactly.
So long as it stays peaceful, there's no problem with it, right?
Right.
You can be as noisy as you want. You can bring a drum set out. We've seen it all, right?
Yeah.
It's really only a threat when the peaceful protest becomes not peaceful.
Exactly. And that's when you act. That's when we act. But what you see and I'll give you a prime example. This is kind of like a cultural thing that we do. And today I was at St. Thomas University lecturing criminal justice major on, my experiences in law enforcement. But I left them with more understanding how important it is to manage your emotions. So this is a prime example. When I went to FLETC back in '83, I go to FLETC, and the way FLETC work is they create a case that you come in, they teach you step by step how to gather evidence, how to interview, and each piece of the puzzle you keep putting together until you graduate. And at the end, it's like, okay, you got to take down this person. So before that, we did a lot of training on going into houses. So I go into a house, I'm going in, and I see our subject in the closet. And I'm like, police, come out of the closet. Now, this person kicks me, and I reacted and stomped on this person's foot. Now, you got to understand, FLETC hires local citizens to play these roles, right?
Oh, that's great.
And I stomped on this guy's foot. He goes, time out. What the F are you doing? This is not real. And I caught myself, and I get it. It was a reaction. And so when I do emotional intelligence, it is the one thing that I talk about. We live in a world that we're mostly reacting instead of, responding.
Yeah.
And so that was a reaction. The guy didn't hurt me. It's just the fact that he kicked me in the mental stuff that I got going in my head. I'm law enforcement. You can't do that to me, blah, 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 you know?
Right.
We have to be better than that. That's where we're operating from. And we have to be better than that. But the problem is they're not even teaching emotional intelligence in any course that I know of right now.
I would imagine, I think it's a great distinction between behavioral analysis, because I'm assessing a possible bad guy,
right?
Someone that's got a nefarious objective, versus my own control of my own emotions.
Right.
I can't imagine in today's, what's going on. And listen, I think we only see the parts the media wants us to see of all these things.
Right. Right.
But I imagine when those crews are headed out for ABC or XYZ, the pressure of what's happened last week, the week before, I do think there is an area where the public, it's important to respect the role that the law enforcement agency, agent, person is there to provide.
Right.
And I think there's such a fine line in there between, I saw what happened to my partner and I don't want that to happen to me, so I'm on edge.
Right.
And look back, when COVID happened, you talked to a number of different agencies where you're trying to bring officers back and you got the public yelling at them to like imagine going to work every day and having people screaming at you in derogatory terms all day.
Yeah. Okay.
Disheartening. Very disheartening.
Yeah, but I'm the professional.
Yeah.
I can't expect that from, and let me give you why this is so important. When we escalate situations, because we're in law enforcement, not managing our emotions, we just lost our tactical advantage.
Right. Right.
Tactics is what keeps me safe.
Yeah.
But if I'm yelling at you now, my peripheral vision is gone. I don't know what's coming at me because I'm looking at you screaming and yelling because I'm not managing my emotions.
Right.
And I read something the other day that if you're not managing your emotions, other people will.
Right.
Right.
For sure.
So to me, and I'm telling you, I just started this journey because I teach a course in emotional intelligence. And I know the people that ask me to do this course with them ask me to join them because of my credentials. It helped bring that course to light. Retired Homeland Security Special Agent,
Right.
But as I was teaching the course, and one of the main parts of the course that I was teaching is the stress part. We have no idea how much stress is killing us.
Right.
It leads to other illnesses that we get diagnosed from dying from.
For sure.
It is the stress, and I've come to this conclusion over the year or so, 2 years teaching this course and how I've been evolving with my personal life is that I'm 100% responsible for how people treat me. But when I'm mastering my emotions, that is our superpower.
Right.
Right.
And this applies to all walks of life.
Everything.
This isn't law enforcement. This is my personal life.
Yeah.
This is me as a leader. This is my team, when they're managing a project or whatever. I think it's very important and a skill that I don't think we talk enough about.
Exactly. And that's why I'm happy to bring this up today. Because think about it. If I'm the professional, your expectations of me is a lot higher than the people in the community. They don't have training. They're not. But we gotta put our law enforcement, because we respect what they do. It's a hard job. Going out every day, not even knowing if you're coming home. That's stress by itself. If you're managing it right, you can have a healthier career. Because I don't know if you know this, but some of the statistics that I read, there are more law enforcement people killing themselves than dying in the line of duty.
Sad.
And what is that all about? We're not, and so the only time officers if you feel like you got a problem, you can go talk to someone, but they're only forced to do it after an event that happened.
Right.
And if I got a problem right now, if I go in culturally, maybe it's not acceptable. Culturally, I may not get that raise because now people looking at me in a funny way when really I trust that person that went and got help more than the person that's faking it.
But it's also my ego, Victor, gets in the way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get help.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
so like, it's like, Dan, how deep do you want to go with this? Because you're right. This is about self-care, brother. This is about me being the best that I can be. But if I'm not being the best that I can be because I'm reacting to everything that's going crazy in my life and not responding, because some of the stuff that I'm reacting to, do I really have to do it? Do I really have to say anything? But if we're not managing the ego, right? Yeah, that becomes a problem. And as much as I love my brothers and sisters in blue and support what they do, but they're hurting, number one. They're hurting. And we're not giving them the serious attention and training that they need. Because if we can give them the self-care, and I don't know how much you want to go into that, because you know what, Dan, I have discovered the answer to all the world's problems. Are you ready for this?
Give it to me.
Self-love.
Yeah.
Self-love fixes everything. Because if I'm taking care of myself, that means I'm in acceptance of what happens that I don't have control over. Right. It's only then I could give true compassion to someone. If I have self-love, I can give love. I can receive love. But if I'm not connected to that, how do I really look out for the people that I'm supposed to be protecting?
But I agree with you. It takes a lot of growth to get there.
Yes.
Right. It takes work. And a lot of us aren't willing to put the work in to get there.
That's the problem.
Let's shift to, human trafficking.
Yes.
Your Quest to Freedom is a phenomenal organization trying to do more, but just for the security professional or non, what is human trafficking?
Thank you for asking that question. So in the year 2000, we got our first human trafficking laws, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, the TVPA. It gave us the definition of human trafficking, and it gave us the way to approach it. It was when the United Nations got all the countries together in Palermo, Italy. That's when we got the TVPA. In the TVPA, it defines human trafficking with words like harboring, movement, transporting, but there are not the key elements of the law. These are just parts of the law. The key elements of human trafficking is knowing the elements, which are force, fraud, coercion. Force, fraud, or coercion. You got to have one of those elements to have a human trafficking case. And you need to know that those elements only apply to adults. So understand this, Dan, and how when I talk about culture and why it's so hard to change culture. Since the year 2000, there was no such thing as child prostitution.
No definition. No legal definition.
There's no, after we came up with the human trafficking law, force, fraud, or coercion, then there was no such thing as child prostitution, because none of those elements I had to apply to anyone under the age of 18 caught in a commercial sexual situation, right? Prostitution. But it took the state of Florida 16 years to finally pass a law that says no more arresting kids for prostitution. I was the human trafficking coordinator for the state of Georgia for a year. It took Georgia 19 years. So when I talk about culture, it's like, wait a minute, we're 26 years into this law, and there may still be states out there arresting kids for prostitution when the law says that they are a victim. But it's only because of the culture and what we've been fed and what we know is how we remain to see it.
Right.
And I give you a prime example, the Diddy case. I don't know if you follow that case.
No.
But the prosecution failed to help the jury understand what I call the invisible chains. The invisible chains are, there are people that choose to sell themselves, and there are people that are human trafficked. The people that choose to sell themselves, we label them as prostitutes and sex workers. The person that's standing on that same corner doing the same thing, that's a human trafficking victim is not a prostitute, because
Right.
I can't look in your mind to see if you don't do this, the fears, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my family? I may not eat. I may get kicked out of the house. I may not get my drugs. So I don't
Right.
get to see what's happening in somebody's head to make them do that. And if you can't explain that to the jury, because most of us see what we see. Wow, you're free. You're not in chains. You should go tell that cop if this happened to you. We don't understand. Everybody processes fear differently than everybody.
Right.
And everybody goes,
Right.
if this was me, I would do that. And really, Dan, you know this, nobody knows what they're going to do until they do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you do a lot of training to help give you some avenues, because when you're not training and don't have a plan, a lot of people panic. But even when you got a plan, sometimes it don't go out the way we plan it to.
So once we got the law and then the definition for the minor, I've been involved in 13 Super Bowls. And
Yes.
I had Nick. I had a phone call with a guy by the name of Nick McKinley. You might know him from the human trafficking space. He's an advocate like you and has a charity to help. But we got in this conversation. The NFL, NBA All-Star Weekend, these big special event weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a category. All of a sudden, if you're in that city or you're following, you start seeing these ads about anti-human trafficking.
Right.
Right?
Good.
What's really being done? It's great to have a little PR around, but frankly, Victor, I don't think most people that I talk to would have a clue as to how to recognize somebody
Right.
that might be forced. I can't remember your other terms.
Fraud and coercion.
Right. Like how do we educate, a PR campaign in that major city? I get that, right? Because prostitution comes to that city to make money, whether they want to be there on that corner or whether they're being forced to be there to be on that corner. Right.
Right.
But I don't know that we have a very good understanding of how do I recognize that person that's being trafficked? So
you have to, we call them red flags, right? So you got to look at a plethora of things that create a red flag. One red flag is if I'm dealing with someone and you're security, you're law enforcement or whatever, and you ask for an ID and the person like, I don't have my ID. He has my ID. Red flag number one. And I always point that out because law enforcement are always dealing with people in that situation. So if someone has your ID and you're an adult, why do you need to hold my ID? Understanding this in the human trafficking world, because that's the first thing I'm going to take. Because if I got your ID, you can't get on a bus, plane, or train. You can't apply for a job. So taking your ID kind of isolate you on your movement and what you can do.
Right.
Secondly, I want to look at the person's body language. If I'm talking to them, now we live in America, we got this thing, look me in the eye. Sometimes I got to be aware of other cultures like Japan. That's an insult if you do that, right?
Right.
So, but I have to be aware of these things. And so if I'm talking to you and you're telling me a story, but you're telling me a different story, now I'm starting to read the body language. Do you have bruises? Do you have tattoos indicating like, this is my my property, loyalty? It's a lot of things. It's not one thing, but it's a bunch of things that go in there. Am I talking to you? Does your response seem rehearsed? Are you looking to someone to give you the answers? Are the person answering the questions for you? Out of the guys, they don't speak English. Let me answer for them. You know what? My spider senses should be going off. I'm going to remove that person, find me a Spanish speaking person to have a conversation with that person.
So that's my next question. Then let's say one of those red flags goes off. Mm-hmm. What's the recommended next step?
Well, am I law enforcement or am I a citizen?
Let's say you're a citizen.
Well, if I'm a citizen, then, if I'm really feeling something is wrong, and I tell people, if physically, I don't want anybody to jeopardize their life getting involved. If you feel like you can do something, do it. But I don't recommend that. I recommend people becoming good witnesses. Break out your phone, start taking pictures, get that license plate number, get that description, and then call the police and give them a list. Now, they're not going to respond to one thing, but it's like, yeah, I see this woman out on the corner. This guy was physically moving her around, pushing her around, screaming and yelling. She seems like she's hurt. She really doesn't seem like she wants, whatever that spider sense you have, your gut feeling telling you something ain't right, call 911 is what we do. We tell people to call. Now, the problem that I have with calling 911 is the next time you have a professional on here, law enforcement, ask them the basic elements of human trafficking and see if they can tell you force, fraud, or coercion.
Right.
Because one of the things my organization is advocating for is that human trafficking be put on police reports. Two things happen. We get better numbers in our community of what human trafficking is. And we force all law enforcement, not just the ones that are in task forces, to know the basics. So if I know what those basics elements are and I'm questioning you, now I can look for those elements. Hey, where you from? You're being evasive. Did someone make you do this? Hey, that guy is a pimp. That's your pimp. If you got a pimp, you're in a human trafficking situation.
Right.
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 So it's knowing, if you can know the basics now, if I know the elements, now I can question to get information to lead to the element. And then I call, 911. If I'm an officer, I call the human trafficking unit to come respond.
Right. And do most agencies have a human trafficking unit now, or? They
do. I know I work in South Florida. So most of our state attorney here, the Miami state attorney, Catherine Rundle, is amazing. What she's done to make sure her task force, she takes an officer from all the local law enforcement branches to dedicate one officer to that task force. That officer is supposed to learn about human trafficking and then take that information back to start training other officers. But sometimes they get so busy, and in that learning curve, it's a hard learning curve. But if you're only focusing on human trafficking, it's a lot easier to get there than dealing with rape, sexual assault, all these other crimes, and now human trafficking.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I mean, my thing is training is everything. And I give you a good example. We had a case here. I won't call the department. They're very respected. They have a human trafficking unit. I helped train them. They're one of the best in the area. But if a patrol guy come across a situation and he's not recognizing it's human trafficking and calling them to do a further investigation, bad things happen. And I have to say, a young lady is dead. I'm not blaming the law enforcement for her death. What I'm saying is that if they had done a better job in recognizing this young lady as a victim of human trafficking and called that human trafficking unit to respond, I think that young lady would be alive today.
Are those numbers being captured? My question is, like that example, I am sure there are multiple examples like that, right? Because of training or lack thereof, whatever. Is that data being captured to say, hey, look, we've had X number of, females, whatever, in this region that have been A, trafficked, B, no longer with us because of their trafficking situation. Does that data get captured so it raises up and raises awareness?
Well, first of all, capturing data is the hardest thing. It's very hard to get statistics unless, like the state attorney's office, keep their statistics.
Right.
But if it doesn't reach them, does the law enforcement department keep statistics? No, because there's nothing to keep a statistic about. Because if that patrol officer is not trained enough to recognize it, then another prostitute situation, just another loose, fast girl, young girl, all the cultural things that we've been given to label kids, kids that run away. If you hear a kid run away, I first thought bad kid. If I hear a kid is missing, different mentality.
Right.
And we need to change that. We need to recognize the culture and how we've been programmed to see certain things and reprogram ourselves to the reality. A missing kid is a missing kid.
Yeah. Yep.
You
How
know,
how has how has trafficking changed over, let's say, the last decade with technology and mobilization and globalization? Have you seen shifts in what's happened in recent years?
the number one way kids are being trafficked right now is online. So this is what I tell parents. When I'm in a room with parents, this is my three things I give them. Parents, you are and honestly, we've had law enforcement kids that have been trafficked, by the way.
Wow.
So understand this, parents are 100% responsible for creating a safe relationship with their children, that their children can come talk to them about any and everything. What gets in the way, and this is the other thing I tell parents, deal with your trauma, because if you're not dealing with your trauma, your kids will. And so when our kids are doing things that trigger us because we haven't healed that trauma, we do a lot of reacting. So if I'm a
Right.
kid telling my mom or dad about something and they start yelling and screaming, why am I going to tell them? Because
Right.
if parents aren't creating that safe place for their children, they're creating a market for their kids to go out. They're creating another vulnerability for their kids to be sucked in by somebody else. And
Right.
then I tell parents, what are you teaching your kids about love, self-love? Let's define love and know that love ain't all about what I feel. Love is about what I do, right?
Right.
And so if you can give a kid true security in themselves, when they walk out that door, I don't need to belong. So this stranger that's telling me I'm cute or I'm handsome and you want to do things for me, nah, dude, I don't know you like that.
Right.
I don't
Right.
need to belong to the cool crowd. I can honestly stand on an island when everybody's doing stupid stuff. And especially when it comes to the bully. The bully is the most hurting kid in the class. But
Right.
because of size or because of gifted gab, I pick on you. And this is what I tell kids, and when I talk to kids about the bully, yeah, they're going to pick on you because you're a target. All the other people that are following the bully, they're following the bully because they don't want to be a target of the bully. So they laugh at a joke that's not funny. They laugh at what they say to you. But you know what? If you give your kid the strength of self-love and understanding the mental stuff of the bully is hurting.
Yeah.
Hurt people, right?
Yep. No,
But
it makes
in our
perfect
case,
sense.
yeah, but in our case, people are dying over words. Like we all have the rights to protect ourselves if someone attacks us physically. But
Yep.
we're letting the words take us down an alley that we look back and like, man, I ain't even have to respond or react to that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so if we can explain this to our kids, yeah, that guy or that girl is bullying you because I don't know if they woke up that morning, got beaten by their parents or cursed out by their parents,
Right.
you know. So
Socioeconomic.
yeah, so hurt people. I want everybody feeling my pain. So when we start to understand that, we gain back our superpower that outside of physical attack, what can you say to me?
Right.
Because I know who I am.
When you talk about online, is there particular, is it games? Is it,
Yes.
like, how are they getting to, listen, I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter. I have a 26
Okay.
and 27-year-old but now I'm married and I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter. How are they finding these kids through which online avenues typically?
All of them. Roadblocks, just being social media. If I tell parents that phone belongs to you, the phone is a drug. It
Yeah.
is, look, I think I'm spending too much time on the phone. You know what I mean? It is a drug. So if it's affecting me, imagine what it does. Because I do speeches to kids with parents, and I'm like, parents, that phone belongs to you. They have a privilege of using that phone. That's your phone that you're letting them borrow. So if you don't have access to everything that's on that phone, you can pick that phone up anytime, turn it on, see who they're talking to. There are apps that'll help you do that. You're set it because if you give your kids a smartphone without guidance, you just gave billion people access to your kid.
It's so true. It drives me nuts, the whole teenage phone situation. I mean, my older kids, it was just coming as they were getting into,
Right.
second part of high school and then college. So it wasn't as big of an impact, but still that dopamine hit from that phone, from social media or whatever is I can't replace that.
No.
I mean, I can, but they're not going to, they're not going to go out and play stickball like we did or street hockey. They're going to stay on that phone and get that rush that way.
So that's why I tell parents, when you give your kid the phone, come up with some rules. Number one, the phone doesn't go to bed with you because you're wondering why the kid is tired because they've been up all night on the phone. So it doesn't go to bed with you. You only get so many hours, with the phone, So you got to set rules early. Make those rules early because if you hadn't made those rules, now you're trying to make rules. It's still not too late. If you want the phone, these are the rules. Be mad at me, but understand why. There are people targeting you. Every time I'm with kids, I ask this question. Raise your hands if you have access to the internet. They raise their hands. Raise your hands if you're talking to people online you don't know. They raise their hands. Raise your hands if you actually gone out and met these people physically that you met online. And some of them raise their hands when I know it's more of them. And I give those kids credit. Thank you for being honest. One kid did it and I go, does your parents know about this? And the parents were sitting there. They go, well, they do now. And they're looking at him like, dude, what are you doing? But these are the things I see every day in this work because it's the only thing that I'm focused on. And so it becomes more clear and clear of what actions need to be taken. I have a 33-year-old, so I don't have the phone issues anymore.
Right.
But I still have parenting issues to make sure I learn. And I don't know if you had this experience, coming from your background. Our kids don't always need retired Homeland Security Special Agent Victor Williams or anti-human trafficking fighter Victor Williams. My daughter just needed dad.
Right.
Because we're fixers. You tell me your problem, do this, this, and this. No, sometimes they just want us to listen. Yeah. Yep.
By the way, it's not in our DNA as men to just stop and listen. It's tough.
But that's why I think a show like yours and having these conversations, when's the last time you had a conversation with your kids about boundaries? Because a true measurement of self-love are the boundaries that you set to really educate people who you are and how they should treat you. And you couple that with my emotional intelligence course. And from that, I'm 100% responsible for how people treat me.
Right. And by the way, the emotional intelligence course applies to the teenager.
Exactly. Right. And the earlier you get them on that.
Right.
Go ahead.
So let's talk, we're in the event security space, executive protection space, K9 space. So I want to target just some advice to that corporate security leader, that executive protection team, from their perspective, where does human trafficking intersect and what are the number one things that they should be looking at, right? Different from law enforcement, different from adult, parents. But they're out there and they're seeing different walks of life all the time, whether it's in their corporate campus, whether it's in their community, but they're security professionals. What's your number one tip or piece of advice for them?
So I don't know if you saw in my bio, I did 2 years team security for the Atlanta Hawks. I did.
I noticed that. I used to live in Atlanta, by the way, too, and did a lot of work with a number of those teams. So tell me about that.
So, I remember listening to one of your shows and you were talking to a retired Secret Service guy and he was telling you security is not what we think it is. And just because you're in law enforcement doesn't mean security. Right. Let's get that straight, right? So, and I had to learn, I come from this, 34-year law enforcement background and I had done security with Secret Service. Every year I used to tag up with Secret Service. They're like our sister agency. So whenever they have the United Nations General Assembly, they call us up when they got a presidential election, they don't have enough agents, they call us up. So I have experienced all of that. But what they do and what I do was two different things. And what did I learn? I learned that, number one, communication is the key. Know what your job is. And if you're in management, don't assume people coming from law enforcement, because that's the problem that I had with my boss. He assumed that I knew a lot. I come from this. I didn't come from that. And so it was kind of tough communicating with him because he was assuming. So if you're in leadership, make sure you got great communication on what your job is, what's expected of you, and how to resolve any of those mistakes that come up. If you're the person that's being hired, ask questions. Don't let your ego get in the way.
Right.
So I had to cover like players like Trey Young, Vince Carter. And so I had to learn, if I'm doing protection detail, I had to communicate with them. I had a thing with them. Like I want to give them space. I don't want to hover them unless they need it, but I give them space. And we had communicated a look. He gives me the look. Okay. Then I come in to be the bad guy. Sorry, guys. He got an appointment. He can't sign any more autographs. He has an appointment, and you take him out of there. So, I mean, the key thing is understanding, I had to learn a lot of tough lessons. I had to eat a lot of ego stuff too. Yeah, because my boss was like, this is going to be a blow to your ego, but blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that hurts. But you got to be open, because a lot of our stuff has been programmed and we are cultured. And we got to be open to step outside that culture and reprogram all the crap that was given to us from day one through our careers, what worked, what didn't work. Because when you're in that world, it kind of changes. It's a different world.
It 100% does. And look, there's a lot of former law enforcement and frankly, my team that runs a lot of event security projects are not former law enforcement, right? They're event security professionals.
Yeah.
So either way, specific to human trafficking, what's the lesson that we tell them? Other than, look, see something, say something is kind of, but seeing it, you talked about the red flags. How do we educate our teams to do a better job at this?
So you got to have training. You got to get them in the room to learn what it is. And then you give them what it looks like. And then you tell them what you can do after. I don't know so prior to me starting Quest to Freedom in 2023, I was in Atlanta. When I left the Hawks, I did a year as a human trafficking coordinator for the state of Georgia. And I moved back to Miami, August of 2021. They gave me someone asked me if I would be the vice chair of the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition. And I took it, not a paid job, volunteer, but it reintroduced me to the community that I had left for 3 years.
Right.
It was only when I started to do my own work. But what happened in April of 2022, I heard this story about a father taking his 15-year-old daughter to a Dallas Mavericks game. She went to the bathroom, and the next time he saw her was 10 days later when they were rescuing her from a hotel being sold for sex. I immediately, when I heard the story, I started connecting with my NBA contacts to find out if they heard about the story. Some did, some didn't. But September of right before the season start, they always have NBA security conference, right?
Yep.
So at the security conference, they had it here in Miami, and I gave a human trafficking presentation, which everybody loved, but there was no follow-up. Right? They get it and they see the importance, because a lot of it really can apply to their personal lives, but there's no follow-up. One of the other things that I did, that after giving them the human trafficking, I did a research on missing children, because what that father did, the father reported her missing at halftime. She was still in the place. Later on, they found out that she was there for an hour, but nobody knew. So I did research and found out that Disney has the best missing person policy. I copied that policy and I generated a policy that the NBA should initiate it. And it's basically anybody that works in that arena, you could use a, what do they call it? A missing person alert.
Yep.
You get the information, Amber Alert. You get the information, you get a photo, and everybody that works for the arena, boom, 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 they all have cell phones. Should get, boom, 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 this kid is missing. She was in there for an hour. So they would have found her. But these are lessons learned. But get back to your point. It's when you recognize something ain't right, how someone is managing, controlling somebody, pushing them around. Something just don't seem right. If you're on a personal protection detail, the guy that you're working for is smacking around his woman. What are you going to do? To me, you can't pay me enough for me to watch you do anything to somebody like that.
Right.
Sir, let me help you. Let me protect you. This ain't the way to do this, because it's a protection detail. I ain't trying to be your father, but my job is to keep you out of trouble. My job was to keep players out of trouble.
Right.
So if I saw something that they were going down a road, like, hey, guy, you might not want to do this. We need to do something different. But again, going to your point, recognizing whatever that gut feeling is that something ain't right, first thing you do, call your boss. Boss, This is what I got. And then let them figure out what to do. Because you still have a detail at that moment that you got to protect and do what you got to do. Let your boss know immediately what's going on, and then let them come in with a plan to address it.
Go back to that Dallas incident, because I remember that matter. I don't recall the details, so I want to give you this.
Yeah,
I believe that there's the consensus thought is probably, I'm in an arena. It costs a lot to come to these games. I'm safe. How did this girl get targeted?
Great question.
By this perp? Was she known in advance to this guy? Did she just get pulled from the crowd? Like, how does that happen?
So there are some details I probably won't talk about, but I will give you this. The kid, so human trafficking victims and traffickers are all created in homes all around the world. From unresolved trauma. I'm either going to leave the house being a predator or a victim. Right. So with this child, they had been having some problems at home. She's 15, right? Not communicating well, whatever that problem was. She decides to go to the bathroom. And this is the stuff that I'm talking about, Dan. When that kid walks out that door, what is missing in her life? What is she looking for? This guy spotted her and just started talking to her. He didn't take her out. He was just friendly, what we call grooming. Oh, you looking cute today. What's up? What you doing? You smoke weed? Let's go out and smoke some weed. And convince her to go outside. Once she was outside, that's when everything happened. That's when the force and the coercion happened. This kid right now, when I heard this story, I contacted the ESPN writer who wrote the story that connected me with the family lawyer, who connected me with the guy that found her. I never talked to the parents or the kid. Right now, I know this kid and I hope to re-engage her because I know this kid right now is ready to tell her story.
Oh, that'd be
great.
And
it's going to help a lot of kids understand, like, look, I know we ain't always on the same page with our parents, but our parents don't want us to be trafficked.
Right.
Because when that happened to the kid and I saw the story, I've been following it. The kid was like, Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Lessons learned from that exact scenario, I think would be invaluable for, any audience.
Yeah.
Not just security professionals, but families, teenagers, etc. I think it'd be phenomenal. I want to pick your brain. You have a deep investigations background. You've been in trafficking a long time. We have the most current news is Savannah Guthrie's mom.
Mm-hmm.
What's your gut feeling on what's going on in this matter?
Well, to be honest with you, I am so not trying to listen to the news these days. Ain't nothing good. And we keep taking in negative stuff, and it just makes us negative.
Yeah.
But I have been following the story. The latest that I heard that possibly the brother-in-law had something to do with it. And if he did, I don't want to say that this lady might not be alive right now.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Because if it is turning out, because when you look at a lot of missing person type situation, normally sometimes it's people we know,
right,
and they're not too far from the house, right?
Right.
They're not too far from the house. So I'm wishing that family the best. I can't imagine what they're going through. But to answer your question, it doesn't look good if they have the brother as a suspect and he's not talking. Like, I don't know what happened. That was yesterday news. I don't know the latest, you know. So.
It's funny. My wife said it right away. Brother-in-law. Just instinct, you know. But to your point, right, there wasn't, no one was coming out. There wasn't a direct ransom request. There wasn't, like, your first thought is it's someone close.
Yeah.
Physically and or relationship wise, right? So it's terrible. I wish the family the best, and I hope she's alive, and I hope that she's returned. But what a terrible thing to have to go through for the Guthries.
We need a good feel good story in this country, bro.
Yeah,
we need some feel good stories. But to your point, when it comes to human trafficking, the majority of human trafficking victims on the sex side know their trafficker. And I'm gonna add something that nobody really ever talks about sometimes. I had a friend come to me and said, Vic, I don't go to strip clubs and I don't buy sex workers. Why do I need to know about human trafficking? So my thing to them was, do you own a cell phone? Yes. Do you have the ability to buy food? Yes. Do you have the ability to buy clothes? Yes. Then we have a minimum of 40 to 60 slaves working for us. The cobalt that goes into our phone, we don't care that mineral is dug up in the Congo with families digging that up by their hands for $1 a week.
Right.
You know, we don't care that if you eat chocolate and you don't see a fair trade label on your chocolate bar, that the majority of chocolate throughout the world, the beginning processes of that is a sold child in the west coast of Africa picking a cocoa bean. Nobody cares because it's not my kid. Right. It's not somebody I'm attached to. And that's why human trafficking.
Yep. Not my community.
Yeah, but it's happening everywhere. It is happening in your community. Yeah. The question is, you know, how do we find out? Because my kid can't tell me this guy, I'm afraid of him. I was in another university the other day and I was asking kids, you know, if someone came up to you and said, come with me right now, or I'm going to kill your parents, what would you do? Or I'm going to harm your parents if you don't do what I tell you to do. The one kid was like, I'm telling my parents. The other kid was like, I don't know. And the majority of us are in that world. I don't know. Right. So it's very easy to take a kid, get them in a vulnerable situation. And like, if you don't do what I say, I know where you live. I'm going to hurt your parents. Right. It is that easy.
It's amazing. You know, listen, unless you've been exposed to it, you don't think about it being that simple.
Yeah.
Right? What's next for Quest to Freedom? What's happening in the future here?
So we just going into our third year, and which makes us more eligible for grants. But what Quest to Freedom is all about? We want to educate, like we just had this conversation. Yeah. We have conversations about human trafficking just like I'm having with you, with parents, with kids. Our legacy program, and I call it our legacy program because if anything ever happened to any of me or my team, we want this program to be there as long as this country has a human trafficking issue. And that is our emergency transitional services. So what does that mean? When I was an agent, there were times that we would pull a victim out of a situation and with my most best intentions, like, oh my God, we're going to help you. We get back to the office. There is no shelters. There is no space.
Yeah.
And now I gotta like, well, is there a friend you can call? Well, I got this friend, but yeah, probably your trafficker knows the friend too. It
Right.
always bothered me. And I know it's something that's needed today because I got a call from the national hotline recently. But our ultimate goal is to raise enough funds with Quest of Freedom that we get to register our ETS services with the national hotline. Right now, we provide that service in Florida and in Georgia. So if law enforcement or service providers come across a victim and they just don't know what to do, we're going to get you that hotel for a couple of days. We're going to get you that Uber ride to safety.
Because that just doesn't exist right now. Is that what you're saying?
It does, but it all depends on where you are and what's going on. I'm trying to establish Quest of Freedom on a national level with the national hotline that it never again where a victim could go could be questioned. When I got the call from the national hotline the other day, I was a little shocked. Like, I'm not ready for this. We don't have the funding, but we never turned down a victim. So I was like, okay, let's get this victim on the phone. But something was going on with that victim that when I started to ask her questions, she couldn't answer. And then she hung up and we never reconnected with her.
You know, I mean, I never thought about it. But my wife's very active with your canine shelters. Mm-hmm. We have 3 dogs. 2 of them came from shelters. And when you just brought that up, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm associating a person's life with a canine. But think about that. We have canine shelters for that abused dog.
Right.
Right. I've never heard of that for that abused, trafficked individual.
Yeah, we have it now. Back in the day, we were putting human trafficking victims in domestic violence shelters. Those 2 different crimes, 2 different victims wasn't a good match.
Right.
Have we gotten better? Yes. Can we do more? Yes. And that's the ultimate thing with Quest of Freedom. We want to establish that ETS program nationally, so at least that is never a problem again. We're going to get you to safety and then bring in the other organizations to help you along your journey. And the last thing that we do is, and it's all about strategic partnerships. Like we're partners with the Blue Campaign, which is Homeland Security's awareness program on human trafficking. We're partnered with an organization, the University of South Florida Bright program. I look at them as the national hotline for the state of Florida. They've gone out and vetted over 100 organizations providing different services, and we're one of them. So now if I get a call, I fill out a form, I submit it, and if those services are available, they pop up in a queue. We instantly know how to get victims help. And not to badmouth the hotline, but I call the hotline. Sometimes I'm on the phone for an hour. I was on the phone for an hour to get services. And the services that I was seeking was to try to get a victim to safety. That keeps feeding me that I know this services is needed. And we're going to do everything that we can. So if your listeners are out there, q2f.org, questoffreedom.org. If you feel like you want to be part of this solution, call to be a volunteer or donate, knowing that this funding is helping victims of human trafficking.
Victor, I very much appreciate it. This has been enlightening. Thank you very much for your time and being on the show today.
Dan, it's never enough time. I appreciate this opportunity, and please feel free to reach out anytime you need anything from us.
Will do.